All right. Oh, God. All right. Welcome to the first edition of the Impact Investing Night. Woo! Okay, nice. So let me present myself. My name is Stephanie. I am from Manager More. I'm G38. I come from Ecuador. And actually, I have a little bit of passion for social entrepreneurship and impact. And this is Thiago.
Hi everyone, I'm Thiago, also from Manager More G38. I'm also Latin American from Brazil. And yeah, I'm actually passionate about impact, not only from the investor role, but also from the entrepreneur role. And that is kind of like a bridge to why we actually are doing that.
Yeah, so let's start with the why, right? So a little bit about the story behind this. This event is actually inspired in the Impact Investing course, which you will hear a little bit more about further on, so no spoilers at the moment. But the idea is that you get inspired by the impact stories that all the speakers here will tell you. You get motivated. The idea is that you leave this room having a drive for impact because we can all make something to make the world change, right? So, first of all, without further ado, we want to thank Netlight for this amazing venue, for the support, and we want to welcome Moritz to the stage. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Actually, my only role in that is to welcome you as well in the name of Netlight. We are the people who pay the beer tonight. And originally, I prepared more like a Stewart airplane speech to tell you where the emergency exit is and so on, because we had 250 accepts for tonight, and it was briefed, if that will happen, we're completely overbooked, and you have to make sure that no one dies in case of emergency. Luckily, to that extent, we are not 250, so I don't have to make the Stewart speech. But for me, when I thought about it, it actually is the real reason what I want to say, that I want to give a lot of creds and kudos to the two of you and all of the people involved, because for me, the sign of overbooking a venue where someone says otherwise people will die with 100 people is actually true entrepreneurship. And you took a risk and you made sure that that I actually take the risk by saying I will pay in case of emergency. I was super impressed. For me, and I think that's maybe the last important words, we are super invested into, of course, building a better society as well. I mean, we do that by working from within our clients. So we have a strong focus, no matter in what industry of our clients are, that we make sure we bring a very integrated thinking of driving impact from within. But on top of that, we, of course, make sure we as well invest into ecosystems. So we are partner of the Tom Venture Labs, but as well of the WFP. We work close with very investors. And on top of that, we have a lot of alumni from Manager More. So whoever tries to build ecosystems who drives or try to drive change, it's worth actually investing into. And that is our role tonight. I'm very thankful that you asked us for that. So thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Moritz.
Thank you, Moritz.
Small pause till the thing works. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, everything going well so far.
All right. So let's start with the exciting part of the event. What is actually going to happen tonight? Who are you going to listen to? Let's talk about the agenda. So, first of all, we have our first keynote speaker, CEO of InPlanet, Felix Sardenek. Afterwards, followed by two impactful startups, Kinsoy and Functional. And at last, before of the first break, we actually have Morgan Simon from the Candid Group, impact investor and also author of the book Real Impact, accompanying us online from California. After our break, Thiago will guide you through our panel discussion, featuring actually former CEO and partner of Netlight, Erik Rensgaard. So please a big round of applause. Come on. Nora Prea from the World Food Program. Patrick Herman from Picus. And Carola Vogel from the SIA Academy. We will have, thank you. We will have different inputs from the investor side, from the enabler side, from the educator side. And at last, the cherry on top, we will hear from the impact investing course participants who will get the Kente investment. So, we have we have actually a small challenge for you. So take pictures, make videos, post them to the stories, tag in Instagram Manager More, in LinkedIn Manager More by Internematum. We will announce the winner at the end, and you have a small surprise. So, first of all, our first keynote speaker, Felix Hartneck. Give me 1 second. Nice. I'll leave it to you then.
Hello, hello. Ah, yeah, nice. Yeah, great seeing you all. So many old faces, some new faces. I'm Felix, CEO and co-founder of InPlanet. InPlanet is actually my third company, my first real impact company. And I will take the next 10 to 15 minutes to give you some background information about InPlanet itself. So what is this company about? And also to share some learnings and also some of my journey, how I get to found this impact startup. And I will also have some advice at the end, what for me personally was most important to found this company. And we also believe in how others can found impact companies. I started my journey like a lot of you guys. I was also at Manager More. I studied here technology and management at the TUM. I quit my studies at the 4th semester to fully focus on Parkir. Parkir was my second company, was about smart parking and also smart mobility. 2 years ago, I started to offset some of the non-avoidable CO2 emissions of Parkir. And I still remember this day, an intern came to me. She did all the calculations, how much CO2 Parkir is emitting. And I got this final number, and then I was going to my computer, searching in the internet for carbon credits, like CO2 certificates. And I found some, and I was super surprised how ridiculous cheap they are. And this was kind of the first moment when I realized something's super broken in this market. And then looking at thousands of millions of companies which have committed to be net zero by 2030 or also by 2050, I realized, okay, this is not a problem only I have as an entrepreneur with my mid-sized software as a service company. Thousands of companies will face this issue. Also, if you look at some studies, there's a really famous report from the IPCC, so the World Climate Council, which is showing that until 2050, we need 10 to 15 billion tons of carbon removal if we like to achieve the 1.5 degree goal, and if we also kind of achieve all the CO2 reductions we have planned. And like you all know, we obviously don't at the moment. So compared to what we have today, this is an increase which we need by 50,000%. The third really interesting thing I learned was that especially the food systems are responsible for more than one third of the global CO2 emissions. And I myself, I grew up on a winery in the south of Germany, so agriculture and farming was always something which was kind of my childhood and also part of my life. So I took all those different points together and I decided to found InPlanet. And InPlanet is a platform to enable farmers to remove CO2. And to remove CO2 in the tropics in a safe, durable and also scalable way. We're especially doing this by taking local rock powder residues, so mines, they are producing residue streams which no one needs. We transport them to farmers, and then the farmers are spreading those rock powder residues on their farmland. And then through magic, which is called enhanced rock weathering, the rock powder residues, they're capturing carbon for 100,000 of years. This process is called enhanced rock weathering, and it's generally working pretty simple. So CO2 and also thank you. So normally the CO2 from the atmosphere gets into rainwater and it's forming a weak carbonic acid. This is really comparable like you make your sparkling water at home, just in a way lower concentration. And then this weak carbonic acid is dissolving the rock powder residues and gets the minerals out of those rock powder residues, especially calcium and magnesium. You all know those minerals. And those minerals, they have the superpower to capture the carbon. So they hold the carbon, which is normally getting back to the atmosphere, and bring it down to groundwaters and also to the rivers. And then the carbon is stored away for 100,000 of years. Same time, other minerals are fertilizing the soils. So farmers can reduce pesticides and chemicals by up to 50%, and they can also increase their yield by up to 20%. And Planet is now 1 year old, and we've been really crazy the last 12 months, organizing 2,000 trucks and shipping around 50,000 tons of those rock powder residues to farmers. And like you can see here in some of the pictures, results already are showing that the crops are growing quite fast, the roots are way more stable, and farmers can reduce their chemicals and pesticides. We have on the left side is sugarcane, and in the middle is maize, and on the right side is millet. We're mainly doing this in Brazil, because we believe Brazil is the ideal way, an ideal place to kind of scale enhanced rock crawling now to the first megaton by 2026. So 2026, we have the goal to remove annually 1 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere, which brings you also a company, by the way, of 100 to 200 million euros in revenue. Brazil is ideal because we know there's 6 gigatons, so 6 billion tons of rock powder residues, which we can turn into more than 1 billion tons of carbon removal. And also in Brazil, it's super hot. I've been there many times. It's raining a lot. And also the soils are super mineral depleted, which means the weathering process is happening 50 times faster than in Germany, in Europe, or also in the US. We're building a marketplace around this. So we're connecting the farmers and the mines, that the farmers get their rock powder from the mining residues. And then we fully focus on the quantification of the carbon removal credits. So we're developing measurement approaches how to quantify the carbon which have been sequestered. And then we're selling those CO2 certificates to companies like Microsoft, Stripe, or Klarna, to name some of our customers. Today, like you saw at the first couple of slides, the market is super small, it's almost non-existing. And if you take only the lower end of a potential market, you see that we get by 2050 to a market potential of more than 1 trillion. So I think there are a lot of impact areas, like a lot of impact markets, which are growing at the moment really fast, but the carbon removal market is super outstanding. And it will be at least 1 trillion euros. We in Brazil, we have 23 billion euros annual potential, which we can make if we stay only in Brazil. So quickly to summarize, we've got founded in 2022, so the company is now a little more than 1 year old. We've been running through different accelerators, especially climate and impact accelerators. Then we were lucky to raise a pre-seed seed round of 6.5 million euros, and we also got some first customers on board, like Microsoft, Stripe, and Shopify. And just to mention also Microsoft again, as a good example, Microsoft committed until 2030 to be net zero. And they know they have 5 to 7 million tons of carbon removal, which they have to offset. So they're going to invest 1 billion euros annually by 2030 in this topic. So now the 3 main points I personally believe in. Also, if you compare a classical startup where you need a business model, a market, and everything you all know, to an impact company. And for me, it's like the 3 things. The first thing is the impact metric. And I guess some of you, having done this course, know about it already. But for us and for me, it was really, at the beginning, super important to quantify the impact we're doing. Not just telling something is good, really being at the end in the position to quantify this. And we have a huge Excel sheet where we're trying to measure all the different impact areas which we are kind of contributing positively to. Of course, carbon removal, like how much carbon we are moving, how much carbon we are kind of avoiding, and then a lot of other things as well. The second topic is then the investors. So we only got impact investors, which are classified with the Article 9 fund. So they only also just from their fund structure are aligned with the purpose of the company, so to do something good. And I think this is also something really important, maybe not at the beginning, but later if you have to make decision if it comes to profitability, to growth, to costs, and also to revenue, which are almost kind of the most important topics, sure, for investors. But if they have to report because of their fund structure also on some impact metrics, this is just naturally aligning the purpose of the company with the investors. And then finally, what I personally believe in most is the purpose and the impact-driven culture. And of course, this comes from the founders. Mainly, if you want to build an impact company and you just do this for marketing reasons, or you think it's not rent to make an impact company, I think this will kind of not be super successful, especially if the company gets bigger and so many different interests from so many different areas are coming. But if you have a founding team, which is super impact and purpose-driven, and if you also can make sure that all the employees you hire, they have a clear answer to their why, and this why is to contribute to climate crisis, for example, so to solve the climate crisis or to do something good, then I think you're on a really good path to have this impact also on a scale. We have hired 30 people now. Especially in last quarter, we were hiring 3 persons per week, hiring and onboarding, which was super crazy. And all of those persons have been chosen of 800 to 2,000 applications. So we are super lucky. Also, impact is in the trend. People want to get into impact, but also in the carbon removal space. And for every single position, we got between 800 to 1,200 applications, which brings us in the good position to really make sure we're kind of choosing the right persons, just from a skill perspective, from a geographical perspective, and some other factors. But most important for us is that they all have a clear answer to their why. And this why should be they want to contribute something positive. So, and to kind of close this, I also have a short video just showing some of the people working in our company and explaining their personal why.
Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere hit record levels in the spring, the highest in more than 4 million years.
The rate of the increase that we're seeing in the atmosphere is at its second highest on recorded history.
I think we all know that climate change is one of the biggest crises we have. Biodiversity and also humanity is at risk. And that's why I founded Unplanet, together with my co-founder, to solve the climate crisis and to sequester as much carbon as we can.
So I love to see Unplanet as a life-producing factory. We are taking something that might seem dead, a piece of rock, and turn it into something that creates life, which is soil. Powerful, nutritious, fertilized soil.
We do have a great opportunity, perhaps the opportunity, to actually make a difference and a positive impact in this world.
If you look at the science that's being done, we're trying to do 20, 30 years of science in 5, but we're doing it at the pace required for the to help with climate change.
At the end of the day, learning something about this incredible Earth system, because the soil is just this interface of the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, the geosphere. It's like this fertile skin of the Earth, and with the rock powders, it's this natural way to just heal it again.
Unplanet is composed of a diverse, transdisciplinary team that makes state-of-the-art science by bringing a relevant technology for carbon dioxide removal from the atmosphere.
We have ambitious goals, but we work hard together to achieve them, and everyone just has this common and shared drive to do something against climate change, which is really, really powerful.
Esse desafio me faz ter realmente vontade assim, de seguir em frente e continuar batalhando cada vez mais.
Working with a purpose, it's what really fills my heart. It's not only the vision to sequester, CO2 from the atmosphere. I would say that we share, right, this responsibility.
E é muito especial essa mistura de culturas e isso agrega muito pra gente. E
a gente tem várias nacionalidades, então cada um contribui tanto na parte técnica quanto também na parte humana, cultural. Então é isso que eu gosto, esse dinamismo, essa capacidade de integração que é muito difícil a gente encontrar hoje no ambiente de trabalho.
Everyone on the team is equally motivated, hardworking, and very loving about really creating a positive future for humanity.
Para ajudar a sociedade no sequestro de carbono da atmosfera, para a gente conseguir ter um futuro melhor para as próximas gerações. E quem tiver interesse, venha com a gente.
Eu sempre quis fazer a diferença para o mundo. Acredito que cada um fazendo pequenas coisas a gente pode salvar o planeta.
We want to be a people-centered, performance-based company. As a people leader, I wanted to join a startup where there are founders who can welcome my ideas, who are innovative, and where we can really create something unique.
Hoje combatemos diretamente as mudanças climáticas e como uma startup agritech com avançado suporte tecnológico, científico, temos, como eu posso falar, temos o privilégio de sermos pioneiros dentro de uma solução que vai contribuir não só para a minha geração, mas para futuras gerações.
If I could tell the whole world only one thing about Unplanet, I would tell that it's all about community. We're facing a crisis which is worldwide. And we only can solve this crisis by working together. We at InPlanet, we're paving the way to get enhanced rock weathering in the tropics to one of the leading carbon removal technologies. But we only can achieve this by building a strong community, which is enabling itself. And together, we will be faster and we will also able to solve this climate crisis and reverse climate change.
Thank you so much, Felix. No, stay on stage. It's a little bit type of Q&A. So we have this amazing entrepreneur here who actually has tried to tackle one of the biggest challenges we have in our generation, climate change. So mic is open. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand.
Hey Felix, great what you are doing. How did you find this business opportunity and also this kind of technology? How did you start?
I mean, the kind of the initial thoughts came really from having the pain myself, like taking climate really serious, but not able to reduce or kind of offset some of the emissions which we cannot reduce in the company. And then I was on a long car ride in Brazil together with my current co-founder. It's actually an old friend as well, and we were driving through the country, and we were realizing the huge amount of land which is available there. And we were hearing a podcast, like a super science nerdy podcast about enhanced rock weathering. And some scientists have kind of got some breakthrough in laboratories. And I was asking myself, okay, why is this not kind of being embedded in a company? Why is no one scaling this? Because enhanced rock weathering, like this process, is one of the most important processes the Earth has. Like 99% of all the atmospheric CO2 gets captured by this. Just really, really slow. So, and also the first couple of months, I always was wondering myself, okay, where's this company coming up I don't know about, which is doing this already, but it wasn't. And today there may be 5 companies worldwide which are somehow successful, because at the end it's a super complex topic, especially if it comes to the measurement and the quantification in the soil.
All right. Thank you very much then, Felix. It was a pleasure having you on stage.
Thank you too.
Now for the next part, we have decided to, aside the grant investing, support 2 impact startups from the Munich ecosystem, Kinsoil and Functional. First of all, we have Functional. They aim to revolutionize the biomanufacturing. So let's welcome Martin Pat, CEO and co-founder from Functional.
Thank you. Oh, font is messed up. Good start. Hey, it's a pleasure to introduce you to Functional. We are a tech bio company that accelerates the transition to production methods of the bioeconomy. And I realized bioeconomy is not often known, so let's start by explaining that as a context. All the products that you can see here are essential to our life. And for that reason, we consume them at scale all around the globe. The problem, sadly, is that the production methods that we rely on to make them are broken. And you have heard what they lead to, right? Destruction of ecosystems, pollution of the atmosphere, also pollution of our health and food chains. So it is our generation's challenge to fix production methods of that. That is a problem at scale. Good news is microbial fermentation can be that replacement technology. It is basically like beer brewing, but instead we get all those cool things. So the good thing is about it, it's very efficient, it is sustainable, you can feed biomass instead of fossil fuels, and you can deploy it locally. Just put a beer brewing tank and let's go. Also, it is very versatile. McKinsey estimates that more than 50% of all production methods worldwide can be replaced like this. So every entrepreneur thinks, oh, that's a lot of work, let's replace them and make tangible steps towards that future where we have great production methods. Now, on the other hand, I mean, this means a lot of work. And this is what Functional wants to help. Make this transition happen faster, and that's how we want to have an impact towards a sustainable future. In particular, we will tackle the industrial challenge side of this. We need to make this cheap. That means good unit economics. And the way to get there is scale up to reach economies of scale. And when you have, this means go from small reactors to really huge ones. And when you have done that, then the product, the cost of the product equals the cost of the input materials. And then the challenge that our clients will face is, let's solve the biggest cost point on the bill, and that is feedstock. Feedstock accounts for up to 60%. So that's the biomass that you throw in. Now, this is where we start to come in. The problem for them is biology is really hard. You change a tiny thing and the entire process can go sideways. It's really complex. So whenever they develop a solution, it takes them really long time. And this is the reason, this is how they do it. They go to the lab and do trial and error testing to hopefully maybe find a solution that's good enough. So it's clear that manual testing in the lab isn't doing justice to the complexity of that challenge. And that's where we come in. On the left-hand side, you can see you can do very few experiments in reality. What we will do is we allow our clients that develop these replacement fermentation processes to transition to a digital-first in silico experimentation flow. So simply put, let's do simulation a lot before we actually go to the lab for the first time. And whenever you can deploy simulation, the improvements are always insane. You can see the numbers here, 1,000 times faster development, a third of the cost spent, and do basically as many experiments as you want. Now, developing the technology is the hard part about this, and this is where the founding team, my co-founder Dong and me, come in. So we come from exactly those two industries that matter, in our opinion. Dong is a fermentation expert that knows how to acquire data at scale, and this is the first part of our solution. Let's leverage data instead of manual trial and error. And the second part is let's do simulation and apply advanced algorithms. And this is my background. I'm from the AI and silicon design company industry background, and together we build Functional. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. So sadly, we don't have time for Q&A, but you will be able to meet and mingle the speakers and the startups afterwards. So for our next startups, we actually have Kinsoil, which mission is to decarbonize and find out the potential of carbon sequestration for agri-food companies. So we welcome to the stage Gio Shirazdi. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Okay, yes. What a start, huh? Oh yeah, now it's working. Hi everyone, my name is Gio Shirazdi. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Kinsoil. And what we do in Kinsoil is we put carbon where it belongs. Before starting, I just want to say that we've been working with Netlight over the past several months very successfully, and to be here is pretty amazing. So, yeah. To start, we're living at the moment in the time of polycrisis, where grand challenges like biodiversity loss, climate change, food nutrition, and livelihood, people making livelihood, is dominating the headlines. And at Kinsoil, we believe that soil can play a crucial role in all of those crises. Healthy soils are responsible and are source of 95% of food that we consume. 1/3 of global population is working in agriculture and making their livelihood from that industry. And 25% of global biodiversity could be found actually in soils. What is often overlooked and now is becoming more and more prominent is that soils are the second largest carbon sink, second only to the oceans. And for perspective, agricultural soil could absorb up to 8 billion tons of CO2 annually. Who should care about that, and who is that relevant for? Short answer to that is agri-food businesses. Current status quo is that approximately 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions actually come from agri-food space. And companies are under high pressure from new regulations, but also from conscious consumers that they need to decarbonize their operations. They need to decarbonize their supply chains. And luckily for agri-food businesses, soils are part of their supply chain. And interestingly, many companies are already leveraging this resource and have soils as an integral part of their sustainability roadmap and try to manage them for their own goals. One challenge, however, that exists is that if you want to manage anything, you need to be able to measure it accurately. And conventional methods of measuring soil organic carbon is like this: going to the field with an auger, spending a lot of time in digging the holes, taking samples and sending them to the laboratory. We also saw that in the previous video in one of the presentations. And that is very time consuming first, and then it also costs a lot of money and time, because to get results from those laboratories takes a lot of time. This small scale, this can be relevant and suited for small scale activities, but you want to do it on large scale, on industrial or industrial size farms, then it's becoming a really big pain point. And this is what we are targeting. We're developing a KinSoil. It's a software platform that based on cutting edge research and from labs, we are able to measure soil organic carbon with satellite data. Essentially, what KinSoil is an MRV tool, monitoring, reporting, and verification tool. The way it works is that companies in agri-food space will be able to go in, check the location of their suppliers' sites, and then get the estimates about how much carbon can be removed or is removed in their field. And also get some projections about how this can change over the coming years. The way it works is we're combining satellite data with existing EU and other soil data sets, but also with some of the ground truth data from sampling activities that we are also doing, and then making estimates of the soil organic carbon in selected area. We started our full-time activities around 4 months ago. In October, we already have 10 pilots fields in 4 different countries. And then we're growing fast, also adding some more pilot projects in other countries and in the existing countries. With this, we are creating impact in 3 different areas. We're supporting farmers, but also nature and organizations to become more sustainable. This is a team. We're working in a rather small team, 3 co-founders and an intern. We all have scientific backgrounds. Antonella has PhD in physics. Tawsif has a background in food systems and agroecology. My background is business and economics. We are supported by grants and some prize money. And yeah, in the coming months, we will be raising angel rounds. So if we are really interested in talking to impact investors. That's it. Let's KinSoil together, because carbon is better in soil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gio. Oops.
Thank you.
All right, please remember that you can talk to the speakers and the startups afterwards. So now for the next one, Tiago's going to take the lead, and we're going to have our second keynote speaker.
Yes, yeah, and that's a personal one for me, because Morgan is the author of Real Impact, and she's a real leader in impact investing. She's from the US, and she inspired not only me, but the whole course of impact investing at Manager More on how we set our values as a fund, what do we see as impact. Of course, besides all of the other guest speakers that we had, she really had this first fire on her, on us, I mean, to set up this whole initiative and end up here in this event tonight. So please, a big round of applause to Morgan Simon.
Woo!
Hello, and thank you so much for the kind introduction.
Thank you, Morgan. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to start asking you a question, so basically to share a little bit about your journey into the impact investing. And since you've been there for a long time already, if you could also say a little bit how the landscape has changed over the years.
Sure. So I'm happy to share that I actually started as a student activist. I filed my first shareholder resolution when I was 19 years old, and that's part of why I can say that I've been in impact investing for over 20 years. I'm in my mid-40s with a straight face. And that essentially I've always thought that social change was one of kind of built up of three strategies, that you had cultural change, which precedes all political change, and that is also influenced by economic change. And that the political route felt extremely complicated, and that the economic route felt like one that was much more accessible. So when we talk about the idea that, at least in the US, you vote more or less every 4 years, well, your economic vote is one that you get to make every day with whatever you spend or invest. And that means that despite my personally coming from a pretty middle-class background, I went to a school with $1 billion endowment and pronounced myself a billionaire, right? I'm essentially saying I actually have leverage over pools of capital that I need to take advantage of, and that we all do. All of us are connected to capital in different ways. And I basically have spent the last 20 years finding ways to leverage that. So as the co-founder of the Responsible Endowments Coalition that was on 150 campuses across the country, founding CEO of Tonic, which is a global network of impact investors. And then for the past 10 years as Candide Group, really thinking through how to apply a social justice lens to impact investing and make sure that we have much stronger community accountability practices in terms of who gets to decide what impact is. So that's been kind of my journey in thinking broadly about social change and then more narrowly about economic change.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that answer. Actually, you are known for bridging the gap between finance and social justice. How do you approach and align financial goal with meaningful societal goals?
So I think one adage that's been very valuable to me that I learned a lot from activists in the Global South. And that's, I've spent a lot of time in Brazil, and that was one of my connections with Thiago as well, and at the World Social Forum and kind of in deep community with global activists and making sure to really sit and listen. And there's an adage which is nothing about us without us. The idea that particularly folks from the global north and that occupy privileged positions within our own societies often have a lot of power to make decisions about the livelihoods of other people, and even the cultural values, the what is important to them when, because what we think is social change may or may not actually be what people want. And when I looked up the word impact in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, right, the standard dictionary of the US, impact really just means to impinge upon, especially forcefully, that it may be positive or negative depending on how we do it, depending on who gets to define it. So for me, it's fundamentally starting with this question of when you're saying sort of the how do we align with broad goals of social justice, it's the how do we even know what those are and who gets to be part of that conversation. So when we are a federally registered and regulated investment advisor that doesn't exactly scream social activists, right, or necessarily community accountability, we have to be really thoughtful about how we're setting that table, who we're listening to, and then what actions that we take as a result. So that's how I think about it, that it's not about a fixed point, it's about being open to listening, learning, reacting, and acting.
That's great. Thank you so much, Morgan. And also about your book, one principle, let's call, that you already mentioned is that you actually go there and visit the communities that you might be investing in or that will have like the effects of your investments. Could you maybe out of your book name one other principle that would be, let's say, extremely relevant for the audience that we have today of students, of investors of different sorts, and also of impact enablers?
Sure. So I think a principle that we think a lot about is the principle of non-extractiveness. And to give just a little bit more grounding, with Candide Group, we work with families and foundations and other institutions that want their money working for justice. So typically coming forward with an objective around impact and wanting support, building out a portfolio to do that. So we've supported around like 115 investments, about 240 million deployed. And the question that we're often asking in each and every one of those investments is, what is the value that's created for community? What's the value created for the entrepreneur or the founding team? And what's the value that's going back to the investors? And how do we make sure that ultimately, if we claim the goal is social impact, we should be adding more value than we extract? And that's something that you can numerically measure, right? That doesn't have to be a totally wobbly thing. And it doesn't mean that you can't have market rate or beyond returns, right? I want to be clear around that too, that returns can still exist upon a spectrum, but the idea is that the community, the impacted community should be coming along with you, as opposed to returns happening at their expense. I think that's where sometimes it can be a little intellectually lazy to stop with the question of, are people better off than they were before? Because in the context of incredibly extractive systems that have been set up in the past, an enterprise that's a little less extractive, is still not going to produce the society that we want. So that's where we try to really think of that triple win in terms of balancing risk and return between investors, entrepreneurs, and communities in a way that's ultimately non-extractive as a core value.
Great, that's really amazing. Also on that, you have influenced over $150 billion in capital. So you mentioned that you have had a lot of impact, and would like to maybe that you share with us one of example of a project or of investment that, on your perspective, has had a great impact. So because I also think one thing that you say in your book is that you're kind of like an enemy of the good, and you go towards the great. So what would have been one project that you have had that you would say that was a great project?
I think one of the inspirations we've really taken from Europe and from Germany in particular is the work of purpose. And essentially the movement towards really rethinking ownership of structures, ownership of companies, and the idea of the perpetual purpose trust. So one of the companies that we've supported is a local bakery that, beyond just having delicious bread, employs majority people who are formerly incarcerated or formerly homeless, including the CEO, who was homeless for a period of time and is very public about that. And at the same time, restructured the company to make sure to have this broad stakeholder ownership, to make sure that when the company succeeds, employees, kind of broader community members also have an opportunity to participate in that economic success. So I think that's one where you get to really think holistically about, rather than let's just address one of these things or kind of create a great enterprise that creates widgets or whatever it might be, but that the idea and the impact is within the ownership. Ideally, we want kind of a unity between all three of those things of how is the team kind of being treated and what economic opportunities created there, how is the ownership addressed, and then also what's the actual product or service that's being provided to community. So that is, it's always, I struggle with that question because it's, how do you choose between like all your children is often the way we feel about it. But I think it's been great to see that so much innovation has really been circling the planet of the way that we've learned from people in Germany, we've learned from people in the Global South. We're trying to bring all these different lessons back together and be able to ultimately support individual enterprises on the ground that are really doing the day-to-day work.
Much, Morgan. Actually, we have another question, and we have a lot of students that might not know where to start or are new in impact right now. How would you suggest, or do you have a tip for us to start independent of how much capital we actually possess?
So I think there's often kind of two lenses to that question. So there's the being an investor and then also being someone who might be interested in a career in impact investing. So I'm happy to preemptively take your question a little bit broader, if that's okay. I think one, in terms of being the investor, I want to go back to that question of or rather that concept that every dollar that you spend or invest is your vote, and just kind of taking note, right, of when you walk into your bank, do you actually know where your money is spending the night? Like, have you asked that question? Have you gone through the website? How do you feel about it? Does it reflect your values? Is there another bank that might be closer to kind of what you want to be supporting out in the world? Is that a change that you can help encourage? The second is to think about, one of the things in my bio that I think is important, the idea of saying that I've influenced 150 billion does not mean that I personally invested it, right? Because oftentimes it was being kind of the whisperer in the ear of large institutions of saying, how can you make more change, right? So I think the other is even, looking at what are the institutions that you're connected to. It could be local government funds. It could be your university's funds. It could be your bank. It could be, any number of institutions where you don't need to be the asset owner to still be able to have influence, but just making sure that we take back that influence rather than just saying, oh, trust it to the experts. They've been getting it wrong a lot, right? So I think that's where infusing some of those social values approaches is really important. The second, from a career perspective, I think one is that impact investment has always been a space really ripe for innovation in terms of organizational development, right? That I've been very privileged. I haven't applied for a job since I was 21 because I just kept building new organizations, right? And I think if you see a gap in the market, go build it, right? That there's a lot of openness and receptivity to that. Or the second option, especially for folks who are starting out in their careers, is find the people who you think really embody the values and the direction that you want to go and do everything possible to work with them. Because I think it's a small enough industry that it is really people based. And that getting to learn leadership under someone where you really feel like you resonate with their style and their substance makes a huge difference. And that there are a number of folks I can point to in my life where I went to them and said, I really don't care what, what type of position, I just want to kind of get to be at the table to see how you do all these amazing things that you do, in hopes that in 10 years, I'm going to get closer to that. And that wound up being a pretty successful strategy to wind up closer to the people I wanted to work with.
And it's take action, right?
Absolutely.
So that's really good that we as, let's say, young professionals might strive to achieve this place at the table, so we actually get a say on all of this billions in capital potentially. So maybe now I wanted to go back to the topic where you mentioned that you spend some time in Brazil every year, Morgan. So once we get to this position at the table as investors, what would be one thing that you would recommend to all of the impact investors out there? So would it be that all of them would have to mandatorily spend some time on the regions they are investing their money? Or would you say there's something that is even more important than that?
I think it's about finding your individual niche. And I think that that's going to be different for everybody. And I think I really try to avoid kind of platitudes because I know that they can then feel harder to implement than really concrete advice. But something has to feel natural and resonate with you to make sense, right? So I think in general, we absolutely need to know the communities that we're investing in. We need to know generally what people's life experiences are like if they're very different than ours. And we need to have a way to be an authentic relationship with people in order to have that knowledge. So one of the things that's been kind of interesting for me, I have these kind of parallel careers, and that I run an investment company and I also run a dance company. And that has been a way to kind of have another language. I mean, I speak Spanish and Portuguese, but I also speak dance. And that's a language that enables me to connect with people all over the world. They don't need to know, or many of them do, that I'm also an investor. But that's not the primary nature of our relationship. And it might mean that I come back and ask questions that are relevant to the investment work that I'm doing, but I have a basis for a relationship that's not just in that work path. For you, it might be something completely different, right? So I think that's where everyone finds their path and connections. Some people don't have the ability to travel. I think a thing we don't often talk about is, I've also made a decision not to have children. And that does give me sometimes a locational flexibility that others don't have, right? So I think in the realm of designing your life, it needs to work for you. That's, if you want to have a life where you need to not be traveling because you really want to prioritize other elements, then great, you could be a phenomenal local investor. Maybe being a global investor is not going to be the right move for you. So I think it's really just about whatever you do, knowing what your lines are to be able to act with integrity. And that there are moments where I'm able to say, you know what, I don't know enough about this issue. I don't know enough about this community. This might be a phenomenal thing, but I am not the person who should be making this choice. So I'm going to try to divest myself of certain powers that sometimes get bestowed to me because of class, because of skin color, for any number of reasons, right? But that's where I have to match in my own integrity. So I think it's the really interrogating, what am I qualified for? If I'm not qualified for something, but I really want to do it, right, because it resonates with me, how do I go out to find that experience to get to a point where I feel like I can invest in a certain sector or geography or whatnot with integrity that I have? And for me, that means relationships of accountability, so that if I'm doing something that's actually harmful, someone is actually going to tell me, that they're not going to be so terrified of me or my control over money to not tell me, right? And then the other is the ability to be in long-term relationship, which is really what tends to enable that. So those are some of the factors that I think have been really important for me. Other folks are going to have different lines of how they feel in integrity, but once again, it's just making sure to have that be part of your question in your job search or entrepreneurial search. What are the factors that I need to have here to feel like I'm able to act in integrity?
Yeah, that's very interesting how actually like your personality plays a role into everything that you do and also what path you might choose. One thing that I wanted to follow up really quickly is the part where you mentioned your bias that you might have, that you might not be actually able to invest in other regions because you have this cultural bias or gender bias or whatever it is. That's also something that we experienced even in our course in the impact investing when we were going through startups from Africa, startups from Brazil. We also noticed that going through their pitch decks, it looked completely different from the usual pitch deck that we look at here in Munich or in Berlin or in Europe in general. So being aware of these biases is also something that we learned in our course, so that you are actually able to identify the best impact opportunities that you can create with your investment. One thing, Morgan, I wanted to ask, can we do an audience question really quickly? Yes. So nice. Does anybody have a question to Morgan?
And because I have 5 minutes and then I have to jump, I think we'll really do one. So we'll make it great. Or if we want to have 2 people ask and then I'll give one answer. But
there.
There we go.
I'm not sure if I should turn around to the camera, but I hope you can hear me right now. Is that correct? Perfect. So let's say a lot of us students work, for example, and we want to spend a little bit of our money and give it to a good cause. Where would you start? Like if you would name one thing where I could start spending my money by saving carbon emissions or by reducing my footprint to have a little bit of an impact, even if I'm not an investor yet, what would that be?
So I think there's 2 things. One is that depending on the issue, I might look at who else might be impacted by that issue and not have capital to be able to donate, right? So to give like a small example, I live in Oakland, California, where we have an extremely high incidence of homelessness, unhoused populations. And that live, like there's a tennis court that's maybe a 4-minute walk from my house that has historically had like 20 inhabitants there. And when we were considering supporting some projects around how to get more affordable housing, because I've been in that community for the past couple of years and have been part of projects, particularly during COVID, to provide people lunches and whatnot, like really knew people by name, and was able to go down to the community and say, hey, we're thinking about supporting with some capital. What do you think about this project? And they're like, oh, we think that's a terrible idea because of XYZ, and actually think that money is much more well spent on Y, right? So there is also sometimes a question of who is the best person to make the decision? Sometimes it's yourself. Sometimes it may be that you have access to people who may have lived experience or scientific expertise or others that you want to go to say, hey, if you had whatever amount of money to be able to donate, where would you put it? And kind of try to crowdsource those sorts of options to make sure that you're covering your blind spots. I think the other piece that I often think about in the context of donations is that donations work really well. They do some things very well and they do some things poorly, right? And this is actually the last chapter of my book speaks a lot to this. that basically I think about donations as wonderful for advocacy, that they're absolutely necessary in terms of like shifting policy. They're necessary for short-term disaster relief. And then otherwise, I look at impact investing as a way to have those resources renew and renew and renew, right? So from that perspective, if I'm thinking about the context of climate, I probably would try to donate to an advocacy organization because I know that they're going back to that original thing around culture, politics, economics. I've used my impact investment dollars typically to solve the economic piece, and then my donor dollars can more go towards solving that political piece. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like using the right dollars for the right thing. And that's where I might be more inclined to look.
One more question, or you have to jump?
One more question.
One more question, thank you.
Hi, Morgan. I would like to ask a piece of advice for impact entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, because there's often an imbalance between or a trade-off if you should prioritize social impact or environmental impact over economical impact. So I would like to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, so first, I think that the trade-off is real. I think we like to say in impact investing, there's no trade-off. And so that's when you're really looking at, do I source this organic ingredient or not? You're like, wait a minute, there's a real cost here. So first is like, let's be really clear that that does exist. But then it's also looking at it kind of holistically in terms of what's the long-term value that I'm going to get by making the social or environmentally conscious choice. So I think some of that is just making sure to be really clear on what the consequences of that are. And it's so different in every type of business that it's a bit hard to generalize, but being able to lay that transparency out and then have that conversation with your investors of, you're saying you want social environmental return, but if I'm going to do that, for instance, I need to be able to reward my employees and I want to give equity to everybody in the company. So maybe I am going to need an equity pool that's 20%, not 15, right? Of like really lay out on the table, like what are the choices and then get to make them as a community. But then at least sometimes they are going to go in lockstep. So I want to be really clear on that too, of like, that might be the bedrock of your brand integrity, or the fact that employees that have equity have been shown to lead to more profitable businesses, right? Like those are pieces where they really do move together. But when there is a trade-off, identify it, name it, and make the choice collectively is what I would say. Thank you. Congratulations to the class and to the event. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, even if I'm definitely happier to be in sunny California in February. But yeah, hopefully we'll connect soon. I'm happy if my email or socials are shared in terms of being able to be in touch with people moving forward. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Morgan. Amazing energy.
Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you.
All right, now the time has come for a break. It's been a lot of input, a lot of insights, a lot of learning. So we have a challenge for you. Talk to the person beside you. Talk to a person you don't know. Get to know each other and mingle. We see each other at 8 point so that we can start the panel discussion. Woo. No. All right, so time to start again. We have our lovely panel discussion coming up. And right now, Tiago is actually going to lead us through it. So let's give a big round of applause to all the speakers.
Give one to you and one to you. And just turn it on. Okay, they're on. All right. Thank you all very much for being here. I would like to introduce you first a little bit, if that's fine. So we have the pleasure tonight of having with us for this discussion, first Carola. She's the head of qualifications at the SEA Academy, so the Social Entrepreneurship Academy. And she has a background basically dedicated to leading impactful projects and also empowering impact entrepreneurs, impact talents towards their missions. So Carola also enriched very much our own impact investing course at Managing More with the input for what is impact at all. And yeah, she's actually doing that on a systematic way, not only with us, but also in many other formats. So a big round of applause for Carola. We also have the pleasure of having with us Erik Ringertz. He is the former CEO and partner of Netlight. And Erik is basically the visionary behind Netlight's impact mission. So all the creative stuff that you see around you, I'm getting there. All the creative stuff that you see around you, like all the atmosphere and the community that you see around here at Netlight is product of Erik, and of course product of what its vision also to bring impact into Netlight. A round of applause for both of them. We also have the pleasure of having Nora Praha with us. She is the venture lead at the World Food Program, and her mission is to guide impact investors on how to create the most impact in different kinds of finance. So we expect a lot on insights from her about innovative ways of financing impact in different formats. A round of applause, please. And we also have Patrick Herman with us, Manager More Alumni and Vice President at Picos Capital. And Patrick's mission is basically to empower entrepreneurs from day zero. And he's focusing on supporting ventures in energy, climate, and healthcare sectors. Big round of applause. Okay, so I took the liberty of introducing you guys through your CVs, but I would like to hear from you an introduction, basically by saying what is impact for you. Maybe we start with Carola.
Okay, I have the great pleasure to start. Thank
Yes.
you. It's a challenge as well. So I think that so many things have been said already, good things about impact that resonated a lot with me. So I'm just trying to, talk a lot about in my daily life, what is impact? Because I think Morgan said it's very funny actually, like just semantically, impact is just an impingement, a forceful impingement on something or just some kind of effect. But of course, that's not what we mean. We talk about societal impact, we talk about social impact, about a positive change in the world. So for me, also talking about impact investment, that's very important that for me, impact goes beyond just minimizing and mitigating harm or negative impact. It goes beyond that because it's also about creating positive impact to actually actively solve a societal problem.
Erik, what about you?
That's right. No, I actually wanted to say the same as Morgan. So she said it all. I think it was an amazing. So nice that you asked her to come here. So that was great. But if I just sort of say from my perspective what she said, I think like to me, sort of impact or the impact investments or impact startups or so on, sometimes to me they are too much focused on the business idea and too much on the what. And I actually think that sometimes you might find companies that sort of seem to have or have an impactful business idea, like I wrote to you, but kind of curing cancer or something like that. But it can be a shit company anyway. So they can be and that is when they lack the why and the how. And then there can be this book printing company that can be the most impactful company of them all because it all comes down to the why and the how to me. And here I'm a bit extreme. So of course, if you have a what that does cure cancer as well, be my guest, it's good. But like the other things come first. And here sort of just I think like what really resonated with me with what Morgan says was like the down to earth thing to it. So she was emphasizing this when she was talking about what Kamali has talked about, like the purpose, and people sort of think of it like some kind of idealizing and there must be something, and it really frightens people. It's about having high integrity, which is actually more difficult than kind of making up a nice purpose. And the same with the how, when she was also like everything was down to earth, and it was like, okay, like one easy how that I took away from her talk was this: you need to give back more than you take. That's a perfect, like that sums up a good how to me.
Very cool. Nora, how about you?
What can I add? I guess like from, I don't know, who has done impact measurement and management? Anybody looked into metric setting? What's important there? Yeah. So, you know, impact can be intentional, non-intentional, positive, negative, attributable, additionality. So all of that, like if you go into that space, you'll figure that out. But like, I'm very much with you. It's in the end of that, what is it? And for me, in my life personally, it was always like, I would equal like impact with inspiration, because that's the thing that really like sparks and will get you going. And is that fire in you that you will go. And whether this is going to be a social impact, an environmental impact, very close to your heart or far, far away, it's that initial inspiration, how you met Morgan, right? Why you're here today. So I feel that then the ripple effect of inspiration can turn into impact further down the road.
Cool. Nice to be back. Manage More Generation 29. It's 40 already, which is crazy. Impact, I also need to refer back to Morgan. First of all, congrats on converting her to have the speech, right? 30 minutes of her time is probably pretty valuable. Impact, for me, it's empowering people to create impact. Kind of ironic in a sense, but in my daily doing and kind of what I aspire to be is backing and supporting founders, right? Creating impact, and it can be multifaceted. Impact is across every dimension, right? It's environmental, it's kind of the jobs which are created by a founder building a company. And therefore, yeah, impact is just hustling and going for your goal in a sense, right? And breaking all the walls to reach the goal. And it can be anything. It can be, you know, the kind of like climate unicorn, which creates a massive both economical, social, and environmental impact. But it can also be your HR tech company creating just like hundreds of jobs, right? And thereby also creating a kind of impact for society. So super nice to be here, and let's get going.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing your perspective on impact. And well, one thing that you mentioned, Patrick, that it's about doing it and actually being there for entrepreneurs. I would like to ask you first, Nora, that one thing that we talked before even this event, it's about the trade-off of how you support these entrepreneurs. Is it through a grant? Is it through an equity investment? So what is your perspective on that, and what are ways that you're working through it?
Yeah, probably like for investment, because it can be a grant, right? It could be equity. I think you would speak more about that. For us, that means debt, concessional debt and guarantees, or grants. So just to frame that in that perspective. And I think there is like the key consideration would be threefold. Obviously there's more, but like key ones would be the maturity, or where the company currently stands in terms of their investment readiness. Because eventually, bottom line, with you, whatever capital you give, you want to make them better at the end of it than worse off, right? If you put a company in financial distress because you invest with debt and they're really not ready because their financials or whatever is not there, you're not doing any great impact there. However, if you go in with grants and this company would have had already an impact investor on the ground and they would be willing to invest in debt, which puts them on a trajectory of like repaying track record of like successfully repaying, and then the next investor would come in and you get away from grants and you then distort the market by throwing a grant on it. Probably that's also not the right thing. So it's really like in terms of investment readiness, where is the company, like where do they stand in their journey, and what's the additionality of the capital that you bring. And another thought is also like the business model. Not every company is made for debt investments or equity investments. It's very much like what they want to achieve. Many of the companies that we support with the WFP Innovation Accelerator, they will always have a grant component. They work in the hardest humanitarian settings in South Sudan. They will not be repaying, and that's okay, because they have a very different mission and their impact or business model is just set up differently. So there, a grant investment makes sense. So it's very much understanding the business model and then where the company is on their journey.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Maybe following up on the investor perspective, Patrick, I would like to ask you from your experience at Picus, how do you manage the balance between financial return as a, let's call it, conventional VC and the impact that you create through your investments?
Yeah, I think just by nature of the business, right, there needs to be the financial return as an institutional kind of like equity investor. I think just one point to add to your kind of like definition on the grants and the depth side of things, right? On equity, I think it's not only the money and kind of the return, right, you're making, but it's much more of getting a partner alongside to the founder, to the team's building, which obviously stays forever in the company, right? Because you're a shareholder of that company. Kind of to strike the balance, as mentioned, I think it needs to be both. One, the financial return, but also the social value you create, right? And for us, and I think for also lots of like other institutional investors, it's not only a environmental impact you can have, right? But it's kind of, how do you define impact? It can be jobs created, it can be things you give back, it can be, how many people will be ESOP millionaires if this thing becomes a kind of a unicorn, right? And thereby, again, giving back and turning angel investors. And I think it needs to be the balance for the institutional investors to make it work.
Very interesting.
What if they stop being impactful? How do you get rid of them? It just occurred to me that you would have, if you have a portfolio, you just define from the beginning that this is an impact company, and then it's no longer an impact company. What would you do?
I mean, if we are a shareholder, we have a saying, right? And together with other shareholders, you have those quarterly, very interesting board meetings, to put it in nice terms. You can fight for it, right? Obviously, the founders do have a massive ownership in the company in the beginning, but obviously there are more partners involved, and that's why it's also super important to be aligned from the get-go. At day zero, when we invest or when the founders are getting off ground, right? You think about, okay, what are the partners going with me for the next 10, 15 years? And then hopefully this doesn't change so radically.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Carola, a little bit to you, because Patrick mentioned he enables all these entrepreneurs, but people actually must get there and be an entrepreneur. So you play a big role on education in that sense, and also on pushing innovative projects that create some kind of social impact. So I would like to know from you, how do you see this evolving throughout time, throughout generations, or throughout new technologies that come, both in terms of like the professional ambitions and motivations that people have that you're encountering, and also partnerships that might arise from these?
Very broad, very interesting questions. So just gathering my thoughts. Yeah, I mean, they're like, of course, education is very crucial in that sense, because of course there are people like, especially who come to the Social Entrepreneurship Academy, who are clearly already know what they want to do, that they want to be an impact entrepreneur and social entrepreneur. They're more about like, I want to learn how do I do that? Give me the tools. And I think that's very, very important, because there's different dimensions to that. One is, yeah, you have to tell them about the tools and the methods and whatsoever, but also you have to put them together. That's the partnership thing as well, because I saw it several times. Like if you put like these kind of characters and people together, usually something really new and amazing comes out of that. Like I'm amazed every time myself, and I keep on learning as well with them, because I'm like, wow. So like giving all these thoughts together. So I think that ecosystem community thought is very, very important in that. It's also very important mission of what we do and what education should do in general. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect, of course, is like from the other side, that there are many people out there who I think would like to do something impactful, but they're not really aware of it. Like, you might study something else, something not really connected. So we try, especially with the project we're now doing at the universities we're working with Impact for Future, like we're trying to reach out to those people to activate and motivate them, like, hey, what you do in your studies, what you're learning, like the science you're learning, or like what you learn about business, you can use that as a means to actually create meaningful societal impact. And of course, that's not for everybody, but a lot of people can connect with that. And it's really nice to see like how, when you set that spark, what can grow out of that. I think we saw some amazing examples already today of people who really created out of totally different areas something really, really great. And actually what's really great as well, what I learned today, that one of the co-founders of InPlanet, Niklas, is actually an alumnus of the Social Entrepreneurship Academy, which I didn't know before myself, but super nice. So that's a very nice example. So you see, you know, like by doing those kind of, it can be a course, a seminar, a workshop, or a certificate program that we're starting at the moment. It doesn't have to be right afterwards, but it can take a few years or whatsoever, but then you see the effect in the long run, wherever people, where they will be working. If they found themselves, if they go into a big, I don't know, big company, become an entrepreneur, start something there, go into media, whatever. There are many different ways. I think it's very important to kind of like fuel that mindset and those ideas.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, because that's also resonates a lot with our intention with the impact investing course at Manage More, that it's really to plant the seed in each one of the people that take part in this course, that whatever role they take, if it's an investor role or an entrepreneur role, they will always have this thought, okay, I should create some impact with what I'm doing, where I'm investing my energy, right? And I think you mentioned also that not only the entrepreneur role or the investor role might be interesting, but also the intrapreneur. And maybe I would direct the question to you, Erik, how you within Netlight have fostered this approach to working together as a company, as colleagues, and creating not only impact for your clients, but also indirectly and directly to the society we live in.
Yeah, that's true, because I'm also like this seeding that you were talking about, and always, sometimes I think maybe you don't create the most impact by shooting at the target directly, and then again, sort of, what's the business idea, and also it doesn't really matter. The seeding of having an impactful mind, like you said, that actually will carry a lot more than individual cases. If you was focusing a lot only on the individual cases, then you might, in the end, I don't know, but just say that you have 10 cases, but the seeding for those 10 cases will be 1,000, and you don't even have to know where that's going. And I think that is the same when we take it from a Netlight perspective. Yes, we do encourage people to work sort of with the accelerator and so on, so being kind of combining work at Netlight with something impactful directly, which is super cool and so on. But it can only be so many people. But then, like what I really like is, again, back to the why and how and so on, to make people, if you have a company that sort of is founded based on solid values and culture. And also, how do you work with each other? How do you behave towards each other? How are you supposed to behave towards society? Sort of on that kind of moral level of impact, basically. And then like to see how that sort of shapes our company, and then it shapes, it makes an influence on our clients, and then it makes an influence on these people's plus ones, and it makes an impact on the people's plus ones parents, and you know, and that impact is sometimes neglected.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe I would like to jump a little bit back to the innovative finance perspective of impact. And in the World Food Program, you guys have a unique approach to that. So you partner with impact investors for upfront investment in return for deal flow or some kind of assistance there. So could you shed a little bit some light on that to us, and why WFP focuses that as a catalyzer for impact?
Sure. How much time do we have? That's a question. First of all, indeed, Netlight is a great partner of WFP. Actually, I have a project that I lead called She Can, which focuses on women's equal economic participation. And it's tremendous help. Bracket closed. At WFP, so I'm part of the innovative finance team, and the accelerator basically functions as a normal accelerator. So we help startups and projects around the world that are contributing to SDG 2, the World Food Program. That's what we mostly focus on their journey to scale. Oftentimes that was with grants, but then that wasn't sufficient. As we spoke, grant is not always the answer. So our team was tasked to find another way of providing capital to go beyond grants and go bigger in that sense. So we structured a vehicle called WFP Innovation Bridge with another UN entity called the United Nations Capital Development Fund. So if ever you go to the UN, there's lots of abbreviations, be ready. And what that does, basically, that helps us to go somewhere in the middle. If on the left-hand side you have the complete humanitarian space, on the right-hand side you have the traditional investment space. Or do you know the investment spectrum, sort of, traditional investments that you have like social and responsible investments, ESG, in the middle for impact and with impact investing, and then philanthropy and humanitarian. So that's a bit the spectrum. And we try to close that gap in the middle. How can we sort of bring those together? Because it's not this perfect continuum as you would see in graphs, unfortunately. So there's lots of gaps in between. And with that, we can help impact for and with investors. So those that want a financial return, because that's not always a given, but those that seek financial return, to basically identify investable deals for them that fit their risk-return equation. Because it's not that, as a Europe-based, that you can speak to that later, but many impact investors are based here in Europe elsewhere, and they want to go to Africa and invest in Africa. However, they have a cost structure that needs to be somewhat lean. So they have a very small team, and you can't just be sending your people around the world all the time, because that really eats into your profits. So where we can then help is basically the accelerator we source in 88 countries around the world. We built those startups, and I'm muting, or battery low. And we built those startups up. We then basically, it's sourcing for the impact investors. We can provide investment readiness. So we work them to really define their product, their value proposition. We help them get their financials straight. We come in with concessional debt. So, very concessional, not yet the bank. A bank wouldn't go there yet. And they build a repayment track record, as I mentioned before. And so slowly but surely, the impact investor has a deal flow or a pool of potentially interesting companies for them that they want to go to. And they know that we are on the ground, we have been investing in these companies, we can share all the impact information that we would have gathered over the year, as well as the repayment track record. And that sort of then helps identifying viable companies, depending obviously what an impact investor looks for.
That's very powerful. Maybe Patrick, a question to you, since Nora mentioned this spectrum of different kinds of funds. Do you see a trend of funds moving rather towards the unconventional and more impact-driven? And if yes, what are the main challenges in that travel?
Well, it's a big one. Maybe just to follow up on your point. One, I think it's about focusing on where you're good at as an investor. Because, for instance, for us, we did some investments in Africa, also impact-driven. But we're not on the ground, right? So we can't support them as heavily as someone who's a local investor. So I think those kind of programs are super, super valuable, because again, you can get the best deals in a way, right? Pre-vetted, kind of already supported, and thereby be a long-term partner. On the scale, I think we're in tough markets, in brackets again. So I think 220 and 221, everyone in the investing world did everything, went from early stage to growth stage, from growth stage to early stage, to impact, to whatnot. I think one trend which prevailed is kind of focused on impact and ESG specifically, right? So you do see on the investing institutional side that all the funds which are being raised right now, they have a massive ESG climate component in it, right? LPs are demanding that you as an investor and as a GP, general partner, that you invest a certain amount in climate-related topics. So I think there is definitely the trend from the right side going to the left, right? But we as institutional investors, it's new for us, right? So we need to work with partners who can help to kind of close the bridge. I think Norsken is a perfect example who can perfectly bridge the gap. They, for instance, invested in one portfolio company of ours, and therefore we can learn from them, they can learn from us, and thereby hopefully create kind of flywheel effects.
That's an interesting synergy for sure. Patrick mentioned how it's important to basically do what you're good at. And now looking at you, Carola, how do you see your role as, can I call you an educator? into nudging talent or people towards knowing what's necessary to create impact?
Tricky one. So, because obviously you cannot teach impact or anything, you know, you cannot teach a mindset or something like that. Or, I mean, there are people who try, but I would rather call it dogma or nothing else. So I think the trick is to give people input, impulses, tools, methods, and make them reflect on that, make them discuss. That's what I said before. That's also why like the group, the together, like is so essential for me. It's not me as an educator like telling people, okay, this is right and this is wrong, you should do it like that, because that's like pretty much the opposite of what I'm convinced of what my job is actually. I can always say what my opinion is and what I learned from my past. So I worked at a social enterprise myself for some time. I can give the perspective, but it's a very specific perspective from my professional past. So I always frame it like that. And I think it's very important to give, as I said, also to give insights on on what is happening out there, like not just staying in the university and speaking. I mean, theory is very important, of course, and all the methods and tools are very important, but then you also have to get into contact with people who actually did it, like with founders, with people working in the ecosystem, and create an exchange on that. I think all of that is like, it's kind of like cooking. You put like all of that ingredients together and something will grow out of that. And of course, every person is different. I think that's also something that Morgan said before, like it's very individual. There's like not the way you're gonna find your purpose or the way you're gonna choose, like you have to find it for yourself. And I think our job as educators is like, as enablers perhaps, is just, you know, like to perhaps accompany you on the path for a bit, and with all the other people that are also there and that are important, and then you're gonna see where it takes you.
Very cool. Maybe to mirror the same question to you, Eric, from your maybe not educator but also enabler role, how do you see your role into nudging people towards impactful careers?
Yeah, okay, and as an investor also, like as three different types of investors, sort of as a privately investing, I think the good thing about impact investment is that sort of I'm not the typical investor. I don't like to sort of calculate what my return would be. It's not that I don't like the return, but it just doesn't. It's just boring. It's more interesting to talk about this how and why, and it gives a chance to do that, and also in an easy way to do this investment, because you can always say. I give you this money, and I can be part of this great thing that you're up to, and I might even be able to help you, and I might even get the return on this. And it's super easy to calculate the loss, because I don't care. Because either it was an investment or it was charity, and both ways I win. So this way of sort of looking at it makes it easy to look at investment, and to get back to the nudging, it's interesting because when I speak to investors that are more sort of that are not on this side, they don't think like this at all, and they don't know how to calculate the returns. So it's kind of two worlds where you say, I don't calculate the return. How is it possible? Because I think like this. Okay, and then and so it's a different thing. And also from my experience from one of the companies that I invested in, they actually had a hard time finding money, which was why they didn't turn to me. But and I was, how is it possible because of this? And they had not considered themselves, even though this is a company, food tech company producing algae food. So, but they had not sort of really identified themselves with this impact entrepreneur, so they had not tapped into that. They have been trying to go to regular investors who was like, yeah, come back when you have clients, and they even do have clients, but it was not enough. And they was, how are we going to raise money? And you're asking the wrong people, but I'm happy that you came to me first, so I can be a part.
It's a very cool story. Yeah, maybe now going a little bit towards the end of the panel and recalling a little bit on what you said is your perspective of impact and what you are doing, how you are enabling or creating this impact. what would be, maybe starting with Nora, what would be your recommendation for students or young professionals, how they can, take their first step, so to say?
In investing or generally thinking about?
Whatever your heart tells you.
I think you have good advice on that one. I think, investment, I mean, we always have this like dollar sign or like euro sign. It's the money we put somewhere, right? And we had the contribution first, like whatever you buy, which bank you choose, it's all these decisions that can obviously be considered and should be considered, but it's very much also your time. And it's amazing to see you all here because you chose to be part of that and get the inspiration, the impact from that evening potentially. So it's really being mindful of like, where do you spend your time with who, also career-wise. I'm not saying don't go private sector, don't go corporate, not by no means, but being mindful of the influence that you gather along the way and how will impact you. That is important, definitely, and not to be afraid at one point in time to jump off the ladder, because if you run up a hill just to realize that it wasn't the right one and you should be rather over there is not great. So I think like defining what impact means for you, and going beyond, is it social or is it environmental? It's also like, do I need close impact? Do I need to interact with people or with the environment directly? Or do I want to go to far places? Or do I want to rather like influence policy level? I think we heard. These are the silent big impact players out there, like AI policy, like regulations. This will impact us all a lot, and that is equally impact, but it's very conceptual, so it's depending what drives you. And I think one is also like, know whether you're like fight, flight, or freeze, because if you go for entrepreneur, you might have to fight some battles. And if you are very conflict averse, probably this is not the right position for you. Maybe you want to start already an impact-driven company and or surround yourself with people that already have that mindset and drive that forward. So know yourself, basically, as well.
Awesome, thank you very much. Patrick, what would you tell us?
Along the similar lines, I would call it. So first, learn where you're passionate about, right? If you're an entrepreneur, think about the topics where you really care about and where you feel comfortable of spending lots of time with. And then gather yourself with the most smartest people in that area and reach for the stars. Is what we preach, or what I try to preach and do myself. If you want to go after impact investing, I would try to contact Bill Gates in a sense, kind of like reach for the very, very top level. They might not respond in the first 5 LinkedIn cold outreaches, but maybe in the number 33. And then you learn a lot, right? So gather with the right people, focus on your passion areas, and then you need to do the work. So kind of, hustle, go through. It's ups and downs, but if you're passionate about it, you can definitely do it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I had something on my mind that I just lost. So you go.
And you can find it again.
I was just confused for a minute, so I'll be back.
Okay, I can pretty much agree with everything that has been said before. Of course, like the time factor and also the professional choices you take are immensely important. So that's a big lever that you have at hand as students, just deciding where you want to spend your time and who or with whom you want to work or whom you want to work for. So that's a very, very important point. Apart from that, for me, it's like, it's some like things that sound very simple, but are far from that. In reality, they can be quite complicated. One thing is like, stay open to new ideas, to new approaches, and also be critical, like on yourself, on other people. Just question things, because we're talking about very complex and complicated problems here. So possibly like the easiest or the simplest solutions might not be the best ones. So just try to stay open in that sense. And for me, a very crucial part is what I mentioned before, just keep on learning. I mean, pretty natural when you're a student, but also afterwards, just keep on learning, always, always, always. And the last point is, don't give up. So if you really go for impact, it's not going to be easy. It can be frustrating at times, but it can also be great and very fulfilling. And I deeply believe in the fact that we can have a great positive impact, also if we cooperate.
Okay, so now comes my turn then. Well, now I know what it was, but it's still not very thought through. But I again back to Morgan, that the whole point of a purpose being actually a matter of integrity. And here I was thinking this. I feel that I have a lot of integrity today, but I've actually been around in business for 25 years by now. And then I was thinking in terms of it from a Manager More perspective, how much integrity did I have actually when I was 25 years old, and be a bit humble about that and understand like, okay, and also I could say that the difference between integrity and arrogance when I was 25 was kind of really vague, and it's still it's still a bit vague. But here the advice then. But it's become more towards like really knowing and being true and knowing what I want, and that actually comes with age. So if you don't have that, then I really liked her second advice, which was like ask other people what they would like, and not talking about necessarily asking somebody who's older, but just asking the people who will be affected by what you're doing and so on. That was a really good piece of advice on top of this to kind of calibrate your integrity.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for your amazing words, your amazing insights. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I would like to ask for a big, big, big round of applause to these amazing people. Thank you so much.
Wow, those were actually amazing insights. And I mean, everybody here chose to be here tonight, chose to pick impact. So let's hear it out loud. Are you ready to make some impact? Come on, there you go. All right, now the final event and the cherry on top of this, the impact investing course. So our participants were actually gonna tell us a little bit about what the course was, what they did, how did they actually scout the startups, which startups they chose, and why. So I want to welcome our newest impact investors to stage. Please, Tiago, Almira, Adrian, Alex, Gina, and Luca. The slides.
Okay.
Another
Maybe
one?
we take this.
Alex.
Do you want to sit? Or we stand? You can sit here. Is it on? No.
Hello.
I think
it takes a little bit time to
go down the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep you busy. So I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm so it's so sad that we have two more people, and I don't want to miss them out. So I'm Almira, and on behalf of Nicole and Svenja, I will give it to Alex to just make a round and.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Almira. I'm Alex. I'm part of G38. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to present our investment proposal tonight.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gina. I am part of G39 of Manage More, and I will also present you some of the startups tonight.
Okay, hi, I'm Luca, part of G38. What can I add? I'm very happy. It was a great course, and now is our final.
Yeah, hi, I'm Adrian. I'm G36, and I can only add that we learned a lot during that course. It was a great time, and now I think we can continue with the rest.
Yes, so yeah, it was really a great semester that we had. It was really amazing to see all the all the energy that we all put into this course. Everybody here just took some faith in them and said, okay, let's all together pilot this course and shape it for the next generations to come and manage it more. So that was really great. Thank you all for going together on this journey. And now we would like to tell you actually a little bit of how was this journey for us. So we basically this course simulates an impact VC fund. So we are a mock fund, basically, and we went through the whole process of starting with our investment hypothesis until our investment, which we will announce soon. And I can tell a little bit about the first part of it, where we had some input from Oliver and from Carola about team values and also about what is impact. And together with these two, so we talking through, getting to know each other better and understanding what is important for us and what we can understand as impact for us, we came up with our investment hypothesis and what we aim to achieve as an impact through the Manager More Impact Investing Fund. And for the next part, I give up to Lucas. Luca.
Yeah. So the third session was together with Amrut. He's a social impact entrepreneur from India, whose mission is to make India read. So we had, I think, a 1 hour call, and he gave us 30 book recommendations.
True.
So if you don't have anything to read, hit me up. And yeah, he gave us, besides the recommendations, very valuable insights, how it is to drive a social impact startup. And with that, we started the scouting phase.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Luca. So, as we said, the next step was scouting actually the startups, was actually getting down to work on finding the startups that we value and that fit with our principles. For this, we had an amazing session with Emmanuel Nama from InnoSpot, and he actually taught us how to use the platform. InnoSpot actually is a platform for scouting startups that was founded by Manager More scholars. So it was a great generational transfer of knowledge from previous Manager More scholars onto us. After using the platform for about a week, we came up with an amazing list of startups, but we realized that early stage startups don't really have an amazing online presence. They don't really focus that much on it because they're trying to develop their tech, their MVP. So we reached out to amazing impact funds from Africa and from South America, and we got warm contacts to really early stage startups, really impactful startups that we managed to contact and really grow connected to. And these were some of the most interesting startups we discussed. But next step was obviously understanding about their business models and their startups. So we did due diligence on them. So Gina?
Yeah, thank you. So now we had to analyze the scouted startups in form of due diligence. In this step, we had help from Jana Petri from UBC, so big thanks to her at this point. And she told us what a typical due diligence process looks in a VC company like. With her help, we also decided on what we want to ask the startup. During a lot of sessions about a reflection of our values and also what we're able to ask and to process, we decided to focus mainly on the impact the startup would have on the triple bottom line. Afterwards, we had, of course, to decide on how we can actually assess the impact. This is very
yeah, for that we also had an impact session in the beginning with Jameda, and it was really amazing to just get to know the guidelines for impact that you need to follow. So the 3 points that stuck with me the most are probably that the startup needs to have like the drive towards impact and not the drive towards just growing the startup, which is just like a point that makes a difference. Then also the impact needs to be scientifically proven, so, or like at least logically reasonable. Because if there's no way that the impact can be reasonably created, then there's no need in financing a startup like that. And then the third point is that the impact needs to be interlocked into the business plan, because that allows the startup to also create impact later on in the life when this startup is grown and matured towards a big company. And yes, for that, we used this knowledge to develop some criteria onto which we couched our criteria assessment. And Amira will tell you more about that.
And our last input session was by Mauricio, where we did an interactive investment proposal simulation. There we learned how to pitch the startups we picked for investments, and on the other side, how to evaluate an investment opportunity, not just startup as an entrepreneurial perspective, but sitting on the other side of the table as an investor. And to take everybody on the same ground, all the participants, while evaluating these, as Adrian mentioned, we set a criteria sheet where we focused on triple bottom line, and we can maximize our impact with the grant that we are giving to the startups. And to maximize our impact, we decided to allocate our grant into 2 startups. And are you ready to hear the first Manage and More impact investment of the first edition? I can hear a drum roll. And it goes to Restauragro from Brazil, which is a famous location today, and Inmig from Denmark. And Tiago and Gina will tell you more about why we picked them and why they are very impactful. Thank you. Woo!
Okay, so yes, as you guys see, we have allocated our funds basically like that. So 75% to Restauragro and to 25% to Inmig from Brazil and Denmark, respectively. And I will have the pleasure to introduce you guys to Restauragro. Basically, what are they doing? They are in Brazil, in Amazon region, working directly with farmers. And what problem do these farmers have? They don't have access to capital, so they cannot just go to a bank and ask for a debt. And they also don't have access to markets to actually sell their production. And the reason for that is because they are not able to comply with environmental regulations that tell them that they should have a portion of their land, of their farms, that is a farm, there is a forest. So what Restauragro does is that they basically restore a portion of their land, a portion of their plots, to become a forest again and comply with these regulations. And by doing that, they are tapping into the very interesting carbon direct removal market, which we heard today already from Felix. And they are not only consulting farmers on these projects, they're not only implementing these projects, but also managing the projects so that impact is constantly being generated and not that just a forest is created and then it dries out again later. And they're doing that on based on their very extensive track record of consulting and implementing projects. They have a very quantitative approach to that and a tech-driven approach to that, so that they are also able to have a high scalability on what they do in an operation that usually tends to be not scalable at all. And as Amira mentioned already, we have looked at these 3 different areas: economic, social, and environmental. Sorry for too much text. Basically, on the economic aspect, Brazil is the market for carbon direct removal, so they are on the right market, with the right opportunity. They are able, by giving access to these farmers to capital and to markets, they are enabling these farmers to contribute even more to the regional GDPs. And basically, as I mentioned, through this tech-driven approach, they actually managed to create that on a decent scale. When we go to the social, that's what really convinced us here with Restauragro. They not only take care that they reforestate these areas, but they also taking a holistic care of this whole story. So they are having this educational approach not only to the farmers directly, but to the whole local supply chain, also to the decision makers, for example, in politics or universities. They are talking to all of the people and convincing them all of the value of not just cutting down trees and planting food there, but also to planting trees and reaping the benefits out of it. And the second aspect in social is that they achieved a way of employment that they give really a decent wage to their workers. And not only that, they also give a sense of value to their people. They are working with people that come from marginalized groups, from indigenous groups, from young people like us students here that otherwise would not have access to any kind of career. They would just take some jobs. So by changing their approach to employment, they actually managed to give this sense of value to them. And on environmental aspects, it's kind of obvious. You're planting trees, you're removing carbon from the atmosphere. But not only that, in that case, they're also securing water security in that case, biodiversity, and all the other aspects that come with actually having forests there. And this is the team from Agro, the founder, Tiago, no bias here at all. Is this guy here, and his story is brilliant. We had many calls with him, and he told his whole life story about how his father was also in the wood industry for decades, and he grew up on the field. He's not just coming on from São Paulo like me and going to the Amazon and trying to make something there as a business guy. He's really the DNA of it, the essence of it, and that's what really struck out in this business. And he also has a strong, very diverse management team with him. And for all of these reasons, we decided to give them 7,500 euros so that they can fund a so-called field day, which is the format that they have already done before, to educate and convince all the relevant stakeholders in the whole supply chain, but also to actually source more reforestation projects to generate revenue for them. So that's our first decision for startup.
Let's come to our second startup. Named Invic, they are trying to find the plastic pollution. So there's no need to tell that plastic waste is actually an immense problem. Around half of the worldwide plastic waste comes from the packaging industry. So this is why Invic decided to find a home compostable plastic from food waste. The process works that they use fermentation of food waste with genetically modified bacteria, and this will turn into a liquid polymer. The polymer can then be turned into an adhesive or into a thin foil, like you can see in the picture. This can be used to package non-food and dry stored goods, for example, from the construction industry. After its use of life, you can just compost it in the bio-waste, or you can reuse it for further plastic production. Therefore, they have a circular approach here. So why did we decide to also grant Invic? As mentioned before, we really took care that the startup has a triple bottom line approach. So let's see what their impact is. On an economic level, they have a huge impact since the worldwide market size for films and wraps in the packaging industry amounts to 33.3 billion euros. Also, they have a highly efficient production process, which allows them to lower the production costs. On the social field, they also have an impact, because when tackling the plastic waste crisis, you're also tackling the health of the people living in coastal areas. Furthermore, they are reducing inequality through fair hires. And now to the most important impact, or the most huge impact they have, it's on the environmental level, because through their circular approach, they can reuse the materials and therefore reduce resource scarcity. Also, since they are an alternative to the current plastic which is used, they are reducing the current plastic and therefore are protecting marine life and also terrestrial life, since their plastic is degradable. So who's behind Invic? The team currently consists of 2 members. First is Katharina with a business background from Germany and Gorm with a chemical background from Denmark. And they will also welcome a 3rd member on board at the end of February. And she will have a chemical background and therefore will take over some work in the laboratory. Okay, so then, because we have been convinced from their impact, we decided to grant them the rest of our 10K, 2,500 euros. They will use the money to cover the costs of the development of their GMO construct, and also they can cover the costs until the validation of the construct. This will all happen in Q2 and Q3 of this year.
And besides our investment, our grant investment, we are also very proud to have Netlight with us. And they are already doing a lot of work with impact startups out there. And this is through the format called the Accelerator Week. So they talk with startups, check how they can help these startups, and actually go through a whole week of working very hard, putting a lot of consultants on these startups and really creating a lot of value for them. And that's why we're very proud to give our 2 startups that we have selected, Restauragro and Invic, also the opportunity to participate in this program with NetLight. Thank you, NetLight.
Hello? Okay. All right. So, for the amazing job, guys. Incredible course outcome at the end. I am so happy for this. A little bit to tell you about the why of the course, actually. We both come from developing countries, as we said, and we were very, very excited to bring in a format where we can actually make an impact in developing countries, which is why it's so important for us that one of the stars is actually from Brazil. So, aside from this, it's gratitude time, right? So it's time to say thank you to all the speakers, the panelists, everybody here tonight. So, where's the clicker? Thank you to our speakers. Felix, if you can come up stage, we have a little token of appreciation as well.
See that?
Well, I think he's coming. Yes. Yeah, so thank you for your energy. Thank you for your tips, your story. It was very enlightening to hear you talk about what you do. So thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you so much as well. Really appreciate it.
Now we would ask our panelists to come back out stage, also to give them a little bit of token of appreciation. It was an amazing discussion, really great insights, and I'm really happy that we could do this together.
Thank you, Carola. Joanna, thank you.
Take it. Okay, so now, thank you for our sponsors, of course. We want to thank Picos, NetLight, ProGlove, and Kertos for being able to make this event possible for everybody to join. And special thanks for Jenny back there, and the tech team, for Moritz, Julian, Anna, and Vincent that have been accompanying us, and also Max. Big round of applause, guys. It was amazing.
Also come on stage.
Also come on stage.
Thank you very much, Moritz. Nice. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, the rest we give later.
Yeah. And now, just as the last thing, and before we finish, Noor, we wanted to present to you a little bit about the team that we managed to organize this, and also call someone very important to stage.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Does it work? Yeah. Well, hello everybody. I'm Noor. I'm also one of the organizers of the event. So it's us three. I'm the one that stays in the back doing the technical stuff. So there's actually a website now. If you go to impact.managemore.de, there you find all the information on how to apply, and if any companies want to support the next generations of impact investing, you can find all the information there.
Yes. Yeah. All right. And last but not least, we want to thank Manage More for giving us the chance to actually take this course out, supporting us in this. And we want to please ask Freddie to the stage. Yes. Come. All the course participants as well, please.
We all wanted to thank Freddy altogether for all her guidance, operationally, emotionally at many times, for all the effort that you put in, that you are always there, and that's extremely valuable for us scholars, how you enable our vision, our personal mission, and that's extremely special. You are extremely special for us, Freddy. Thank you so much.
Woo!
Wrap up. I'll thank the participants.
The challenge. All right. So then everybody sit down, please. Thank you. No, you stay. Okay, last announcement, and for the wrap up, also the social media winner. You have the clicker? Did you add that? All right. Anyways, we'll announce the social media winner afterwards, but the winner actually gets the book Real Impact from Morgan Simon. And to wrap it up, since every good thing comes to an end, thank you very much for your attention. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again the next semester in the next Impact event. Thank you very much for your attention, everybody.
Thank you so much. Good job.
Yes. All right.
Okay, now it's just time to enjoy, grab a drink, grab some food, and talk to each
Mingle.
other, have some fun.